into action. And so it looks like we may have lost Jason. So I am going to drop the tool in the chat. So if you would like to, you can follow along with the tool. Okay. Okay. So there's that. Okay. So something that is really important to remember when you're creating SMART goals, and probably something that we all know, is that goals really require commitment and time. So while some goals may require setting money aside to reach, some goals may also require more information, help from a professional like a case manager, use of a new tool, or some sort of action plan. So accountability is also really important when you're working with clients when they're trying to achieve their goals. That's why the putting the goals into action tool really encourages individuals to share their progress with another person, such as a case manager. So now we are going to take a look at the actual tool. So really, before starting to use this tool, it's important to read this getting started page. Oh, which Joy, if you want to go up, perfect. So this really tells you what the tool is for, what it's about, and how to use it with a client. So the first thing that you're going to do with this tool is break up your goal into small and actionable steps. Then you're going to consider the resources you will need in order to take each step. Then you're going to set a deadline for each step's completion. And then you're going to think about who you want to share your progress with, whether that's a friend, a family member, or a case manager. So if you go back down to the tool. Okay, so we are going to use the goal that we talked about in the previous tool for this tool as well, just so there's consistency. So the SMART goal that we talked about was, I want to pay my bills on time every month starting August 1st. So Joy is going to put that into the SMART goal thing. And so one thing to note about these tools through Your Money, Your Goals is that they are all fillable on the computer. So it makes them really easy to complete with clients, especially when we're working with them remotely. So the next thing that we want to do is look at different action steps we can take in order to complete this SMART goal. So step one may be collect statements to see when bills are actually due. That may be, maybe they have trouble maybe someone has trouble even knowing what their bills are. And so getting all of the different bills they have into one space is important to figuring out, okay, these are the bills I actually have to pay every month. Next, you're going to look at resources I may need. They may need a resource in order to complete this step. So since they're going to be collecting bank statements, they may need to print them if they don't have access to them on a phone or a computer. So they may need to work with their case manager to print statements, or go to the library to print statements, or get access to technology at the library or with their case manager in order to look those things up on the computer. The next step may be putting all your payment dates onto a bill calendar, so you actually see payment dates and potentially minimum payments due on a calendar, so you know when everything's due. So a resource someone may need is to print a calendar at a library, or with the help of your case manager. So when we're thinking about this goal, we're thinking about potentially working on this goal with a client who is homeless, and so they may not have access to a computer or a phone or a printer. So having that connection to a case manager or the resource of a library could be really important to them. A next step could be opening a bank account. So they actually have a place to put their money, so they could potentially do automatic payments, but just have a better way of keeping track of the money that they need to use to pay these bills that they want to pay, starting August 1st. So a resource they may need for that is collecting needed documentation to actually open a bank account. They may want to research types of accounts that would be the best for them, and potentially have a small fund to deposit into that bank account in order to open it. And then a fourth step could be setting up alerts on some sort of device, or having that bill calendar, or setting up automatic payments, which may make paying bills easier, or it may make people not forget to pay bills because it's just automatically coming out of their account. So they may need assistance getting some sort of device, like a free phone through a free phone program, so they can set up those alerts or set up those automatic payments. I think that was the other resource I had. As far as date to complete step, we didn't go through and fill this all out because it's a little bit more difficult to do. But typically what you would do is you would set a date to complete that step by, then move on to the next step. And then you check in with somebody about how that's going. So you could decide how many times you want to check in with your case manager or your friend or your family about how that specific action step is going. Also, a SMART goal may have way more action steps than this. I imagine that this goal would have way more action steps than what is listed on here. So you could just print out another one of these forms to add on more action steps. So I think we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so sometimes after you have set SMART goals, you may need to edit or change your goals due to unforeseen circumstances or priority shifting. So an example of this might be you may be working with someone who loses their job, and they may need to change their goal of saving for a nicer car to a goal of making sure that they can pay for the car that they have and make sure that it continues to run well. So what I wanted to do is just in the chat, I just wanted people to drop some suggestions in the chat, brainstorm some ideas. So say you're working with someone who can't meet their weekly savings goal. How might you revise this goal for somebody? Any suggestions on like how you might want to shift that goal to a new goal? So go to a daily goal, okay? So smaller payments over a longer time, yep. Change the amount of savings. So so you could change the goal to something that costs less money, or increase the number of weeks you are giving yourself to save for the goal. Did somebody put something? No, okay. What if you needed to shift an existing goal that was because you've used up your emergency savings? How might you shift a goal for that? Okay, so Adrian said explore different savings options. So if someone's used up their emergency savings, it may be good to create a new goal to build up more emergency savings. So that's just an idea for that one. And then how might you shift a goal if your client doesn't feel that a goal that they already have is important anymore? How might you help them shift that goal? Go back to values. Yep. Look at values and see how they could come up with another goal. Ask what is important or prioritize. Yep. So with this one, really what you would want to do is come up with a different goal that feels important to a client based on what their values are. Or go back to that SMART goal sheet and see what are their dreams, what are their hopes, what are their wishes, what are things that they want to change, and make a new goal or shift a goal based on those things. So now Joy is going to show a handout that your Money or Goals created on revising goals. So this handout on revising goals really provides providers and clients with information on how to adjust goals based on changing circumstances and gives examples on how you might do that. You can really look this handout over with a client and then send it home with them for reference. If they decide that a goal isn't working for them and they want to shift it. So that's just a really great tool to have for clients who are looking at revising their goals. And I think that's it.
All right. So when you're thinking about goal setting related to finances, you really have to consider life events and large purchases. So we can break that down. What is a life event? Well, that's just something that may or may not be unplanned that people generally experience at specific life stages, although that's not always the case. And then what is a large purchase? Well, that can be defined as something that's generally only purchased once or maybe a few times in someone's life that requires more money that most people don't have as disposable income from one paycheck. So large purchases like life events can be planned, but they can also be unplanned. So if we want to make sure that we're awake, just put in the chat some examples of life events or large purchases that you can think of. Whatever comes to mind, I can read those off. Buying a car, absolutely. Buying a home. Death of a loved one, funeral costs, absolutely. Medical bills, birth of a child. Car repair, absolutely. Weddings, death, injury, vacations, absolutely. Yeah, so there's a lot of different kinds of life events and large purchases that come up. If we want to move college, very true, to the next slide, this is going to be the breakout room groups that we're going to do. So there's 5 groups who are each going to be broken out into to give the opportunity to meet some new people, hear some different perspectives. There's going to be a facilitator in each group. The facilitator will present out, so don't worry, you don't have to speak, just in the small groups. And we will ask you to identify, based on whatever group you're in for the individual you're assigned, what experiences they've had, what they're likely to experience one day, as well as any large purchases you can see them incurring in the future. So Jason, if you could use your Zoom magic, or whoever is in charge of that, if Jason is not on the call, to break us out into the rooms, that would be wonderful. Just a few more seconds to make sure everyone's back in the main room. And then we can start off with group number 1, the facilitator from that group, to share out briefly what you all chatted about from your 18-year-old graduating high school that plans to attend trade school to become a skilled welder. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so that was my group. I will say it was a little, not challenging. I guess it was a little challenging to think about that initially. So some of the life events that we talked about that they were likely to have already experienced is that they graduated high school because they're 18. They've legally become an adult. So they've probably already earned their driver's license. Or they could have taken one of those career placement tests or something like that. And they probably have already applied for trade schools of where they even want to go. Some life events likely to experience one day. Well, they now have the ability to vote, so they can vote since they're 18. They'll probably move out of their parents' home or finding a job. And large purchases in the future, paying for school. Possibly buying their own car or buying a new car to get to and from work and school.
Awesome. Thank you, Jacinta. Okay, we're running low on time, so we can just skirt right along. I really appreciate that. So if we move on to the next slide, just for time's sake, can we just talk a little bit about why people might, plan and anticipate life events or large purchases ahead of time? If you could put that in the chat. Why is it good to think about large purchases or large goals ahead of time? To prepare for the future, absolutely. Reduces stress, great point. It also gives you the flexibility to save smaller amounts over a longer period of time to plan for things that are unexpected. Absolutely, things pop up all the time. Saving, more flexibility, absolutely. And then why do you think that some people might not plan ahead of time for large purchases or life events? What are some reasons? If you could put that in the chat, please. Fear, lack of resources, chronic stress, too many balls at one time, scary, month to month, absolutely, capacity. Yeah, sometimes people are struggling to make ends meet and survive through one day, so it's hard to envision a future. Can't afford expenses. Yeah, some people say, I can't afford to save anything right now. And sometimes people feel like the goal is so large that they don't know where to start. A lot of the tools in the Your Money, Your Goals toolkit that we're going over can help break that down and work on expenses such as saving when you're on a fixed income. There's specific tools for that, which we aren't covering today, but are going to cover in future trainings. But if we move on to the next slide, there is the Your Money, Your Goals tool that talks about planning for life events and large purchases that we can go over right now. So Joy, if you want to click on that, then you can see on this first page here, the Getting Started, that it's meant to help clients think about events that are likely to happen in their life, large purchases they're potentially need to make, and then consider where they are right now in their lives and what are some expenses or events that may pop up, and estimate the costs of those expenses and events and identify ways to pay for those expenses. So if we scroll down to the next page, we can use an example, maybe the moving example that we used previously, and say in that column there, moving expenses. So let's just say time frame, a client needs 6 months to save or obtain $3,000. So maybe that they are able to save $1,000 themselves, and they're working with a housing provider or social service agency that has pledged to pay the other $2,000. So in this example, amount of credit they'll need is nothing. But let's use another example. Let's say when they move, they're going to purchase a mattress. Maybe they need 7 months and the cost of the mattress is $700, and they feel that $300 out of pocket is comfortable for them and they're able to do that. And then maybe they'll need to finance the other $400 or use credit in some way. So these are just a couple quick examples to see how someone can break down some expenses or goals and pay for them in different ways. And now I'll pass it back to Jacinta for her final slide.
Yeah, so wrapping everything up. So now that we have these tools, where can you start? There's the good thing about all of these tools is that you can use them depending on how much time you have with a client. Whether it's just 10 minutes, you can always use that Setting Smart Goals tool that we used in the beginning. If you have 30 minutes, you can use that tool and putting goals into action. And then if you have multiple sessions and you have an extended amount of time that you can work with people, there's you can use all of those tools that we've kind of gone over, and you're able to follow up and see if progress is being made towards the goal, and then using the revising goals handout if goals come up that they're no longer interested in. So yeah, that is that.
Thank you, Anna and Jacinta, and thank you everyone for bearing with my technical difficulties earlier. I appreciate those of you who are still on the training with us. I want to take just a quick moment here at the end to highlight a couple resources that the Coalition on Homelessness wants you to know about. I want to give a quick reminder about economic impact payments, aka stimulus checks. Despite the fact that most of you have probably received them, there are still about 10 million Americans, most of who are on little to no income, who haven't yet claimed this benefit. The deadline to claim it is November 21st. This is a $1,200 check available to everyone who is a citizen of the United States and who made less than $100,000 last year. The Your Money, Your Goals toolkit has put together an excellent step-by-step application guide to help folks that you're working with complete the form. There's a simple online application portal that folks can fill out to, there we go, to claim their benefit. And so again, this is kind of one of the great supplemental tools that's made available in the Your Money, Your Goals toolkit that we encourage folks to take advantage of. And then another financial resource in the community that we want folks to know about is the new program through King County Metro. Metro and Sound Transit have collaborated to put together what they're calling the Annual Subsidized Pass Program. It's an Orca Lift card that costs no money for people who are low income. The $50 Orca Lift card is wonderful, but the $50 can be a barrier to people who are not making very much money. So this pilot program is targeted at folks making 80% federal poverty limit or less. Eligibility for the time being is tied to enrollment in a handful of state and federal benefit programs. So if you're working with clients who were on SNAP, Refugee Cash Assistance, ABD or HEN, or receiving SSI, they're eligible. The three agencies signing folks up are Public Health, DSHS, and Catholic Community Services. Probably the easiest way to get an application going would be to either call DSHS or call Public Health at the 1-800 numbers you see there, or you can go down to the Orca Lift office in downtown Chinatown area of Seattle, and you can complete an application for that in person. And then just as one quick reminder, as we are less than 1 week away from the historic 2020 election, we want to give folks a voting reminder. Anyone is eligible to vote so long as they are at least 18 years old, a citizen of the United States, a resident of the state of Washington, and no longer currently under DOC supervision. A lot of folks believe that they can't vote if they have a felony conviction on their record or because they don't have a traditional address, which is not true. So long as you've completed the terms of your sentence, you can vote. For people experiencing homelessness, they do need to provide a mailing address where they are getting their mail sent to, and then the residential address can be more of a description of where they spend their time, like a street intersection, a public park, or maybe an emergency shelter that they stay at sometimes. There are three main ways in which you can get your ballots submitted ahead of the November 3rd deadline. At this point, we do encourage folks to drop their ballots into a ballot drop box. That way it will get sent directly to King County Elections. If you send it in the mail, keep in mind that ballots need to be postmarked no later than Tuesday, November 3rd. So again, given the tight deadline that we're looking at, we do encourage you to go to a Dropbox location. Most Dropboxes are located at or near libraries or city halls in your community. We'll include a link to look up ballot Dropbox locations in the follow-up email. And the thing I want to highlight for you all here is that the third option is go to an in-person vote center. This is a new thing that King County has been piloting this year. There are 6 locations across King County where folks who can show up in person and complete their voter registration and register to vote in person. If you could jump to the next slide, please. These vote centers are going to be open starting this weekend on Saturday, October the 21st, and will also be open for most of business on Monday and Tuesday. Again, you do not have to be pre-registered in order to vote. You can submit your registration and submit your ballot on site. And these locations also have disability access equipment. So if folks are hard of hearing, need a touch screen or some sort of adaptive equipment, this is a good option to send people to. There are 6 locations across King County, also including the King County Elections Office. If you could jump to the next slide, please. The Bellevue Gym is a location for folks down south. They either want to go to the Federal Way Performing Arts Center or the Kent Showwear Arena. For folks in the Seattle area, the 2 vote centers are going to be located, one at CenturyLink Field, just south of downtown. The other will be at the Dempsey Indoor Recreation Center, which is located on the south side of the University of Washington campus. And then if folks are on the north end of King County, the Kenmore City Hall is also a location that they can go to. And I see a question in the chat from Adrian. Yes, if you are registered, but for some reason didn't get your ballot in the mail or weren't able to turn it in that way, you can go and you can complete your ballot at the in-person vote center. If you're not registered to vote, you can register at the vote center and be immediately given a ballot that you can then fill out and submit on site. So please encourage anyone, regardless of their registration status, who hasn't yet voted and would like to submit their ballot, to go to one of these locations. And if you are needing anything like maps or bus tickets in which to help your clients get to and from these locations, please send me an email after the training. I'd love to connect you with some resources. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of our training here. I so appreciate you all for taking the time to be here with us. I want to quickly ask if there are any questions for those that are still on the call that we might take a moment to address. I'm going to include this information in the follow-up email, but we have put together the information for our next in the series. Our next financial empowerment series training is going to be on Wednesday, December 2nd, and it's going to be all about savings. I put the registration link in the chat there. It will also be included in the follow-up email. Great question, Adrian. We've been putting the recordings of these trainings available on our coalition website. If you go to our trainings and professional development page, you can view the training from our last session as well as from the original session, along with links to all of the tools and resources that we've discussed here so far. And again, I will be including this information in the follow-up email for you to review. Well, again, thank you everyone for taking this time out of your day to join us for this series. We do hope that this training series is meeting your needs well. There is a post survey that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau would like you to fill out as well, just to sort of track that you are a part of this training. And if you need any additional resources or if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or one of the excellent Hopelink facilitators of this training series.